The theme is about mistakes. And, a person asked me once if I made a mistake, and I said, listen, I thought I made a mistake once, but I was mistaken. And the reality is I could look back and I could safely say that I've never made a mistake in my entire life. I've only had learning experiences.
Welcome to the Outliers Inn, produced by the Operational Excellence Society and sponsored by Zonatech Consulting Group International, with your hosts, Joseph Paris and David Schneider.
Well, hey there, everybody. Get ready for wasting another hour with us here at the Outliers Inn. My cohort, JP, is here with me. We're going to talk about how we make mistakes all the time. So how you doing, JP? Make any mistakes lately?
I haven't made any mistakes lately. Of course, I just did send in my taxes, so I might be notified of a mistake sometime in the future. But for present, no, I didn't make the mistakes. I will tell you something screwy about the taxes, though. Yep. Here I am. I'm in Germany. Okay, so I have to send my taxes to the States. Right? Makes sense. I have to use a private carrier. Okay, like UPS, DHL, or FedEx.
Right.
And I'm given a specific type of courier service that I have to use. Now, neither of those services can deliver to a P.O. box.
Right.
Okay, so far so good. You got me, right?
Mm-hmm. Got you.
All right. Now, if I am sending a return from Germany using one of these private carriers, and I don't have a payment, it goes to a location.
Yes.
But if I do have a payment, which I do, it only goes to a P.O. box.
Lovely.
Okay. So, how do we, unscrew this problem, right? And my accountant, God bless him, I didn't want him to work too hard on this because he would obsess over it forever, all on the clock, and it would cost me like more than my taxes.
Of course, you pay for their obsessiveness.
So I just gave him what I got, and after his research, he sent me the links of what I sent him already. All right, so he was not particularly useful. Now, to compound it, in Europe and in America, Good Friday was a holiday.
Right.
Okay. But in Germany, in Europe, the day after Easter, Monday, basically, is also a holiday, which meant that my taxes wouldn't be able to leave here in Germany until Tuesday, which is a day too late. Okay. So that means I have to send them on a Thursday, but to where? Right. So I decided that I'm going to send them to my father in upstate New York. And it was already in an envelope. And all he had to do was take it down to the post office and send it registered, return receipt. Yep. And poof, it was on its way. But, it's like,
you got to have an agent. You got to have an agent in country to take care of things like that for you.
I guess that's my father.
Yeah, that's your father. It's, it sounds crazy, but it's the same thing when you are a foreign entity doing, with a registration in another state. So for a while, my business was in both Virginia and Pennsylvania, and I had to have a registered agent in Pennsylvania be my registered agent, where that's where the state's mail went to. And all they did was put it in an envelope and send it to me.
Yeah, that's what I do with my trusts and business trusts in Wyoming. Every couple of months they send me whatever, usually junk mail that ends up in Wyoming. I told my clients not to send checks there because it takes 3 weeks to get there, another 4 weeks to get to civilization. I think they take the Pony Express to Wells Fargo, So today's theme is about mistakes.
Yeah.
Making them, suffering them.
Well, I picked that one. You asked me. and I picked it. And that was right after the debacle of our last broadcast where I didn't show up.
You didn't.
I didn't show up because I screwed up, and I had it on the following Monday on my calendar and had sworn I had registered and done everything that I needed to do to be able to make the magic happen. And completely, I wasn't around,
Well, fortunately, we had Don able to step in, and it was actually a pretty good crowd. But I decided to go completely off the reservation and let anybody that wanted to have their cameras on have their cameras on.
Okay.
And it didn't, work too bad from a conversation perspective, but post-production was a real bear. And I was like, you know what, we can't do that anymore. It's just got to be like, so here we are.
Yeah, we'll have to up our game somehow or another. The technology needs to take another grand leap.
All right.
But I doubt that any of these companies that were technology, darlings for the past 2 years are going to see the growth or the revenue that they've seen already. They're going to all see a reduction in revenue. E-commerce is down, and there's anything that really grew substantially during the pandemic is starting to tamp back down. We're starting to see that. I don't know how much of that is inflation and how much of it is we just want services now. Yeah, people are looking for services, but there's other things that are happening that I think, somebody asked me a question this past week about the zero COVID policy of China. And did I think that it was a mistake? And I said, well, we're going to now see the ripple effect in supply chain on all sorts of technology stuff and all sorts of manufactured items that we consumers have been going through for some time. Because there's a lot of componentry that comes out of Shanghai, and there's a lot of componentry that comes out of Shenzhen. At least the second city has come up out of its COVID lockdown, but the lockdown is stressing all of the interior supply chains within China.
I'll tell you that is going to be a boomerang effect. Okay, Shanghai. There's so much that is exported from Shanghai, and it takes 60 days for it to reach the supply under optimal conditions. 60 days before it's on the stores in the United States from the moment it leaves Shanghai, right?
Yeah,
roughly.
Roughly. I remember the heyday of when I was running a lot of freight out of Chongqing. And 2 weeks to get it down the river, a week in terminal, 2 weeks to get it to West Coast, and then a week and a half to get it to East Coast. Or I could do it all water to East Coast in about 4 weeks.
Yeah, so you're looking at shelf to shelf. You're looking at call it
6
2
to 8
months.
weeks.
Yeah,
6 to 8 weeks. I could be shelf, from factory to shelf. And now it's like, oh no, it's not even 6 months. It's like 8 months. I have some clients who they're out 10 months.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this, and Shanghai has been shut down for like a month now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and when I say shut down, I'm not talking about not even going to the grocery store. I'm talking like shut down. And I saw an image. There's like 500 ships waiting to be loaded in Shanghai, and those are 500 ships that should have been on their way back.
That are bypassing. There's ships bypassing Shanghai. They've got cargo for Shanghai on board that they can't disgorge, or what they're doing is they're hitting another port and they're offloading that Shanghai, and then they're doing what's called blanks. And so they're saying that they're calling on Shanghai, but they're sailing right past it to the next open port on their rotation because they can't afford to sit and wait.
Right. Now, I would pretty much guarantee that a zero COVID policy is probably the mother of all mistakes. I mean, it's just like, this shit is with us forever. All right. And it's about time that everybody realize. I mean, I was just reading a couple of days ago where there's two subvariants of Omicron. You know what I mean?
Stop.
And oh, no shit, man. And they're all getting up in arms about it at the CDC. That was why they wanted to push back the face mandate on the planes and stuff. By the way, I've been on planes for the last couple of months, and there's not a free seat on the plane. I mean, they're just freaking jammed. All right. So what are the masks going to do? I mean, especially if you could eat and drink and take the mask, it's just stupid. So I'm glad somebody had a little bit of sanity. But, the theme is about mistakes. And, a person asked me once if I made a mistake, and I said, listen, I thought I made a mistake once, but I was mistaken. And the reality is I could look back and I could safely say that I've never made a mistake in my entire life. I've only had learning experiences.
Oh, you're going to rename it.
Yes.
The renaming.
Hey, I've been listening to the Democrats,
Yes. Let's just change the language, subvert the language a little bit.
That's right.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Yeah, it's not going to be the Truth Commission anymore. It's going to be what the Anti-Disinformation Commission or whatever the hell it is.
Well, I talk about being the mentor for this high school robotics team, and one of the things that we keep reminding a lot of the adults that help us is remember, our job is to let them make mistakes. As long as nobody loses a limb or there's no blood, then we're okay. Yeah. And so they are apt to make mistakes. They need to have that discovery. And so, they are learning experiences until you repeat them.
Right. Just to prove that the first one was not an anomaly, right?
Right.
I got to tell you, I got to share a story about a friend I grew up with. I won't share his name, of course, to protect the innocent, but this guy was the most mistake-prone or accident-prone individual I've ever known in my entire life. He burned like a third of his body. He had to have skin grafts because he was playing with kerosene. Now, this is all as a kid. He lost an eye because his brother was moving the bed, and the rail that hooks into the front and the back of the bed. He hooked his eye.
Jesus!
I can't even tell you how many bones he broke motorcycling, and he had fixed a zip cable across the ravine because us kids, we didn't have imaginations. We just called the ravine. I mean, instead of like some.
You mean stuff like jumping off the garage roof with an umbrella?
Yeah, similar, but he was zipping across it, and the line broke, of course, and he, fell into the ravine, and he broke his back, and his friends carried him out. Believe it or not, other than the glass eye, he was fine, and in fact, he ended up being a firefighter. He ended up
firefighter.
He was a firefighter. I mean, looking back on his life, well,
he didn't make mistakes. They weren't mistakes.
Everything that could have happened. Everything that could have happened. I guess that was his calculus. So, what kind of mistakes have you made there, David? Anything exciting?
Well, I've made a few, but I shared with you the screw up on the last broadcast. There's things that I've done that it's just been momentary lapses of attention. So, like the example that I'll bring up from yesterday was as I left the house to come here to the office, stop by the post office on the way. I get to the post office, reach into my pocket. I don't have any keys. I've got the keys to the car. I don't have keys to the post office box or the keys to the office. So I end up having to turn around, take 10-minute ride back to the house to go get the keys. Now that could be, a mistake, or it could be just CRS.
It's called old age.
I am a certain age,
Yeah.
So, but there is a story I want to share a little bit later, but we've got a couple of folks on here that can share too, like Don and Stefan. So
yeah, well, why don't we have Don? He's been chiming in there a little bit. Have Don come on board. I got to show you something that I'm having tonight there, Don. Let's see here. It's a Polish cherry ale, and its gravity is like 14.5%.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That looks
Oh.
good.
But I had this cherry ale because of the gummy bears, the gummy bear ale that Stefan and I had at your production. And maybe you could share any mistakes you've made in brewing beer.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah. Oh, that's perfect conversation for this one. We're preparing for national homebrew competition right now. And we've got all the beers finished off. And what we've been having these problems with not being able to reach specific gravity, something we've never had before. We've always been able to, usually we exceed it, but we've always pretty much hit everything. And just recently, and we just did it again. We brewed yesterday and both the beers came in way under specific gravity. And we're trying to get this stuff out for competition and it's not meeting spec. And my son finally went in, reached into the bag of grain, pulled out a handful of grain, poured it on a plate, brings it over to me. He says, take a look at this. The grains weren't right. There was something wrong with the grains. They were too small and we weren't getting the grind proper. And I don't think they were developed. They really weren't, you didn't have the sugar content in them. So whatever our measurements were for these recipes, we didn't get the proper sugar extraction out of them. So, and then the other beers that we did that used a different grain, they worked out fine. So, but that was not necessarily our fault, but we have to figure out how to check it before we do these recipes when we bring that stuff in. But now we're talking about mistakes. We've had this, we have a bunch of base recipes, but one of the things you have to watch out for when you're doing these base recipes is when you buy hops, the hops may be the same hop, but the chemical content of them is going to be different. You're going to have variances in what they call your alpha acids. And that's what gives you your bitterness or your flavors and stuff.
Yep.
And we've done a couple of them. And if you don't check it versus the recipe and then adjust it ratio to proportion, then the beer doesn't come out right. It can be too bitter or not bitter enough or not have enough hop characteristic to it. And so right now, and then we've been missing ingredients as we've been going along. And I got after him the other day and I says, we need to get these recipes set up in a checklist. And when you complete one, you check it off. Complete another thing, you check it off. Complete something else, you check it off. We have to start doing it. It's the only way to prevent problems from happening. It's the same thing what we worked with manufacturing. You have to have a set, list of things that you do in a certain order.
Well, in reality, making beer is manufacturing.
Yes. Yep.
It's a process.
It's a process. And you're producing something at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I always take the thing continuous improvement. What are we going to do here a little bit better? We've worked on water chemistry. And since we've been working on water chemistry and how we're utilizing the water and the type of additions we do to the water, the beers have come out so much better. We've noticed a huge difference in some of these.
Well, you don't use the skunk water coming out of the faucet.
No, everything. We either have to use water from the house for like our dark beers, and because that's got high alkalinity, and the darker grains are more acidic, and they'll drop the pH level down to an acceptable level. But the other stuff, we get bottled water out of one of the local stores.
It really smells like skunk or sulfur, horrible. Like brimstone.
It's horrible. I swear to God, you'll turn on that tap, you turn on hot water, it'll be black. It'll come out. You think Flint, Michigan's got bad water? Oh, dude, this stuff is horrible.
So you're highlighting, Don, that almost all the breweries that I've done business with have been successful. Any of these guys, they have substantial labs set up to test the inbound ingredients because they see such variability in grains and in yeasts, and then also with the water. One of them, they had a water treatment operation system that they put in, and just as you had pointed out, they changed or they added a second system, one for dark beers, one for bright beers. And I thought that was interesting because their water source was a pretty good water source, but they did additional treatment and one of them is they added made the water into the dark beer more alkaline, which is
Right.
what you're bringing up. So, and I hadn't thought about that until just now. But all of them had substantial. I mean, I'm thinking about like Russian River out in Windsor, California. The space that they have for their lab, they have a 60 by 60 foot room. That's
Wow.
their lab.
Yeah.
And they test everything. They test the finished product, but they're testing all of the ingredients as it comes in.
Yeah, you have to. Well, wait, I was listening to you on your one podcast. You were talking about that, and you were talking about having the lab set up and how the better ones do. So I put the kid on. What do we need to do for a basic lab setup so we can start doing some more testing and stuff like that. And he's got a list of equipment and everything like that. I got to go out and get shopping and see what we can put together so we can
all you gotta
add
do
that
is
into it.
just watch an episode of Breaking Bad. It'll tell you everything you need.
Yeah, really.
Hey, why don't we get Stefan on the line here? Stefan, you there?
Yes, I'm here. I can tell you which equipment you need in the lab. We can have,
Oh, that's right. That's what Stefan does. That's right.
Speaking of mistakes, I did remind myself that I put set fire a couple of times in the lab. Hopefully nothing was destroyed, so I was able to stop it in time.
You never had any booms in the lab? No little, explosive moments?
Yes, couple of one. I think the closest was when a bit of my ass caught fire, but that was okay. Managed to win.
Don't turn your back on the experiments, man. Don't turn your back on.
That's what happens when you play with some chemicals. I will not tell which ones to avoid that people repeat at home.
Yeah.
Of course, as a consequence, you also broke expensive apparatus. That's, because when you do science, you play with expensive apparatus. And trust me, once in a while, you do something stupid and you broke them and people are widely unhappy.
Widely unhappy. That's a nice way of saying it.
Because not only you broke the apparatus, but also all your colleagues cannot use the apparatus, and you don't know what is the worst. The pressure for your colleagues or the fact that you broke something expensive. And
yeah, that's right. I mean, you're in the the chemical business, and when I'm talking to manufacturers, we talk about health and safety, and if you're working in a machine shop, an accident is going to cost an arm. You know what I mean? It very rarely is going to do much more damage than that. But if you're in the process industry, oftentimes you could, feel or measure your mistakes on the Richter scale. I mean, these things can be very, very kinetic, very volatile. I mean, you're working with the chemicals that interact with one another. You have a pressure and heat. So yeah, it's a recipe for disaster. But you're not working on the industrial scale, right? You're working in a lab.
No, we are in research. So the maximum scale is kilograms. We are not going above. They do have a process to make sure, they do check what they put inside, because you can imagine if you put the wrong chemicals, you may have big problems. So they check everything. Of course, health and safety pass by to avoid that, there is too much of an issue. Still, it happened. Recently, there was a fire in BSF.
There was a fire where?
I think it was, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, in Ludwigshafen.
Yeah, or it's Bayer, whatever, one of the two there.
Yeah.
I think, it's when some people died. So, yeah, it can be really bad when it goes bad.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that the big BASF plant there in Germany, that massive one that?
Yeah, Ludwigshafen. I said it better that time. Ludwigshafen.
It's a tone on its own, just the plant over there, everything.
Yeah, actually, the entire city is the BASF plant. I mean, that's the whole thing. Remember, Don, we were at that abomination in Florida, and I came across this bucket of acid that somebody had left on the floor, leaking all over the place.
Yeah.
And all they had to do was move the bucket 6 feet into the hazardous material containment area. But no, the brainiac just put a towel underneath it, was absorbing this acid. And the way the bucket got broken was somebody was using it to stand on to hang the metal to be powder coated. And they're using it instead of a step stool. They're using this bucket of acid. And so the owner of the company calls the manager of the paint line, and together they decide that they're going to put a base on it to neutralize the acid. Now, Stefan, if you don't know what acid you have, and you're not really quite sure what base you have, and you put them together, bad things can happen. Am I right?
Really bad things can happen.
Yeah,
Really bad things.
So when I saw these two brainiacs, Dumb and Dumber, getting ready to put this base on this acid, I said, I'll see you guys later. I'm going. And that's what I did.
The house with a bottle of scotch.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I figured when I showed up the next day, if the plant was still there and these two guys showed up, I would guess everything worked out okay. But I mean, I'm thinking noxious fumes. I'm thinking, pyrotechnics. I'm thinking, who the hell knows what could happen? So
most likely they knew what it was. I would be surprised if they didn't have absolutely.
No, there's no way. There's no way they knew. There's no way, because these two people are too stupid to know, and I'm not kidding you. I mean, they knew how to paint and they knew how to bend metal, but they didn't know anything about chemistry. And I'll guarantee you that they're only here today because God was looking over them and made sure that these two things didn't mix in a volatile way. But I guarantee you, they're not smart enough to know better. Not possible.
They had guardian angels as well.
They had guardian angels.
They had guardian angels.
Yeah.
Now,
They had more than guardian angels. I think somebody paid the devil off down there.
Yeah. God takes care of the drunk and the stupid.
Yeah.
Is that an example
we all know which one I'm going to be, right?
Yeah. That's kind of an example of making ignorant mistakes. But there's times where there's smart people that fool themselves into making mistakes, and that they thought that they were doing everything right to start with. And these are the mistakes of you're making decisions outside your domain, and you're kind of fooling yourself. With it.
I gotta chime in on that one. I gotta think that's this whole scenario is beyond ignorance. Ignorance is just not knowing. If you look at the definition, it's not knowing.
It's not knowing.
It's not knowing. When you are, how do I want to word this? When you are so self-absorbed with yourself that you think that everything you do is perfect, that's a problem, and that's where we were at down here.
Okay, they were sniffing their own fumes to start with.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, there's those kinds of folks that as soon as I identify that that's what I'm dealing with, I steer clear of them because they're dangerous. Mm-hmm. As you've discovered, they were literally dangerous.
Quite. Yeah.
But, I was thinking,
Dave, you can't help but watch though, right? I mean, when somebody's going to do something stupid. Okay.
It's fascinating.
We've seen it on skis. Yeah, on skis, on bikes, I mean, skateboards, whatever it is. Everybody's watched the movie Jackass, right? Not because, we think they are great actors, but we're thinking, wow, those guys are colossally stupid. All right.
No, they're doing it for entertainment value, for God's sakes. There's a friend of mine was asking me if I had seen any of the Depp Heard trial, which is happening in my own freaking backyard here in Virginia. And I went, no, I haven't been paying attention to that at all. Could care less. And I said, why are you paying any attention to it? And he says, the sheer entertainment value. That's all, sheer entertainment value. So it's like, what the outcome's going to be, or, you don't know what could be said. It's fascinating watching the horror. Oh, the humanity. Sometimes it's, you can't take your eyes off of that.
Okay. And sometimes you do stupid things like, get your arm tangled up in the wireless cord and drag your microphone down into your lap. And
oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
There's those fun things too.
Yeah.
I was, but
I didn't spill my beer.
You didn't spill your beer?
Right.
Good.
First things first, man.
All right. Well, if you had spilled your beer, we would have had to accuse you of alcohol abuse. So. But, I was thinking about, was thinking earlier in the week about and describing a situation to somebody about making mistakes because you thought that you thought that you did all the right things, and you still made a critical mistake because you kept talking to people that had no domain experience. They had no experience within that business domain, but they're still advising you about decisions you should make about that business domain.
Like Democrats in economics, for instance.
Yeah, you could bring that up, but I'm thinking more of a corporate. So years ago, I worked for this North American automotive retailer and service chain. Had service, had retail. You could buy everything that you needed to do it yourself, or you could have the service done. And back in the around 2004, they brought in a new CEO. They fired the old CEO, brought in a new CEO. We watched the wheel spin because this guy had tons of domain experience in retail. He was a retailer through and through, understood retail, all the rest of that. He had also been a McKinsey consultant. McKinsey, does anybody really ever get fired for hiring McKinsey? So he came in and he knows nothing about service. And so he went to all of his old McKinsey pals and said, come help me figure out this service part of the business. And they came in and dropped a whole bunch of freshly minted MBAs, sprinkled them over the, and gave them data, and they went through
Follow the playbook.
Follow the playbook. And they made this discovery. All right. All of the heavy maintenance jobs that you do in your shops always have the customer come back. The customer always comes back. That's a customer service issue. Well, no.
Now hold it. Do they come back for repeat business or come back because they got a problem?
No. Same ticket, same work order. They're coming back. It's got to be a quality problem. You should get out of the heavy service business. Stop doing valve jobs. Stop doing head gasket replacement. Stop doing transmission work. Stop doing, there was about 15 or 20 basic services that would keep a master tech busy for about 8 to 10 hours that you needed to be able to do. I mean, these are legitimate services. And as part of each one of those services, you're taking the engine apart, you put it back together, and you tell the customer, run it for about 3 to 5 days. I need you to run at least 15 heat up and cool down cycles, and then bring it back and we're going to retorque bolts. You do that. Heads, you have to do that. It's a must. Well, that's what these comebacks were. They were part of the work order. But the brainiac that studied the data said, oh no, it's a customer service issue. Now, you'd think, all right, they would learn, because they would talk to the people who were domain experts in the business and would have discovered, no, on this job, we're always telling the customer to come back. We got to torque down the bolts. We do an inspection. There were a couple of other jobs that, you inspect it because you send it out. It heats up, cools down, you retorque it. It's part of the deal. But no, they didn't talk. When they talked to these guys, either it was like, la, 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 I can't hear you, or they didn't talk to him at all. And so all of a sudden, here's this recommendation, and they executed on it. No more heavy service. And with no more heavy service, the master techs went away. And when the master techs went away, so did their tools. And a lot of those tools were what other mechanics used, because the mechanic owns their tools. But what also went was all this knowledge that you would have mechanics be able to go and say to the master tech, ask questions and learn from. And so you had this giant brain drain that left when you had no more work for these master techs. And so within 18 months, the service business that had been a significant, I mean, it had been close to 40% of total revenue of the company. It turned to 10% total revenue of the company. But they said, no, the retail grew so much. No, you look at what happened on service revenue, you eroded service revenue. The CEO made that decision without talking to anybody with domain experience or expertise. He thought he was, but gutted a big part of the company. Now, what's ironic is this company still survives. They're a service only business now. They got out of retail.
Really?
Yeah. They're not in
No.
retail anymore.
You know, the service is where it's at. I mean, I was walking with my youngest son last night, and we're talking about that very thing, you know, welding and plumbing and how basically society needs more welders and plumbers. All right. And I told him about a job I did, my very first plumbing job years ago back in the States. We put in a new water softener, as Don already shared. It's kind of hard up there in Binghamton. Give you a concussion. And the unit we bought, the intake and the output were reversed from where it used to be. So I had to basically do a plumbing job that reversed the pipes. All right. And, you know, the plumber wanted $150 just to show up at the house, and then however much it was going to be. And I was like, there's got to be an easier and faster way. So I went to the Home Depot there, and I said, I need this, a torch, and I need flux, and I need some solder, and I need some pipe, and I need some elbows. And, I went back at a little, steel brush, and I went back and I cut it and reversed it and hooked it all up and turned on the water, and poof, it all worked. And you know what? It was actually quite fun to do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately for the show, I didn't make any mistakes on that. But it was, I didn't even cut a wrong size pipe. It was really a lot of fun.
I joke with the robotics students, you're not really using your tools unless you break one or two.
Yeah, indeed. Listen, we have somebody new that's just pulled up at the inn. And I'm going to invite her on in, and you guys be kind, right? It's very first visit to the inn. So welcome, Esther. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? How is the sun shining on your side of the world?
It's actually, it's pretty much the same side as you, maybe just a little bit south, assuming you're still in Sweden, right?
Yes, I'm still here, retained.
You're awesome. Awesome. So let me give some quick introductions. I'm Joe Paris, JP, as they go. I think you know me, of course. My co-host is Mule. Say hi, Mule.
Hello.
We have a couple of other guests. Don, the beer man Bershnik.
How you doing, Esther?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Stefan.
And we have Stefan Jeanmart from Belgium and points thereabouts.
We've been sharing stories about our mistakes. Got any to share?
So yeah, I would like to know, what do you consider? Well, I'm a bit philosophical. I think you know that now a little bit. And I was wondering, what do you consider a mistake? What is a mistake for you?
Wow, that's a pretty good question.
Well, it's like I led off with earlier, my first wife.
Because this is how I can relate to what you're talking about, what a mistake is.
A mistake in Joe's vocabulary at the beginning of the broadcast, Joe's definition of mistake was a learning opportunity.
Right.
He didn't make mistakes. He had many learning opportunities.
Yes. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, I like that.
But
yeah,
I argue that there's times where there's mistakes made that are, that the individual making the mistake is impervious to learning opportunities.
The question, how expensive was the learning opportunity?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But expensive in which way? Is it like you thinking, Stefan, in the money wise, or you thinking expensive in resources like time that you spend?
I would say both. Time is money, so it could be, you can waste a lot of time, or you can waste lots of money. It depends what you have the most, depending.
Mhm.
Or reputation. you
Well,
know.
I think if we think that that because we're gonna do mistakes, our reputation is going to go down. I think this is already perhaps a mistake, because I mean I am back into studying, and perhaps I'm one of the eldest students in the university in my course, and there is a lot of young students who don't ask questions, and I'm always asking questions, and I don't think I mean I don't care, I mean I don't think that it's actually very good to ask questions, and teachers are kind of looking for it, because otherwise it becomes very kind of a monologue, and the students that don't ask questions because they're afraid of making this silly question, or saying something that they should know, or make mistakes. These students are perhaps learning in a very different way, as if someone is really asking questions. It doesn't matter if he makes mistakes, doesn't matter if people are going to think you're stupid for asking that question or not. I mean, if you're learning, then you have to show curiosity, and you have to be open to make mistakes. And I think mistakes are part of, as you were saying, Mule, from that other person you were mentioning, mistakes are part of experiencing life and experiencing what we're here to learn, whatever it is.
That's interesting. I think a little bit might come with age, don't you think? I think when you're younger, you don't want to show that you don't know, or that you might feel stupid. But when you get older, you just don't care. Like, I'm at the point where I just don't give a shit anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'll just try it, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And
Totally,
yeah.
totally, Joseph, totally.
So
But it's also like for children, would you say that when children are playing and they are doing things like building something with Lego, playing with plasticine or drawing, do you think that making mistakes?
I think that when you're very young, you don't know what you don't know, and you really don't care about your reputation because you don't know what that is yet. When you get into a more competitive situation, like, when you're in grade school, you know that there's people in the class that might be smarter than you in something or another, or, even the teacher, of course, is smarter than you. And it could make you feel reserved. When you have kids on the playground, they haven't even discovered gravity yet. You know what I mean? And they're going to one day,
Right.
and they're either going to get very excited about it, or they're going to become wary about it. So I think it really, is a different dynamic when you have kids that are exploring for the first time. They don't know anything. And getting into a more competitive, structured situation where a mistake might might make them feel more embarrassed.
Have you heard of the spaghetti marshmallow challenge?
Yes.
No.
Yes, I have. And I do that quite a bit with client organizations to
Oh,
help
where you make
break
a
down.
structure with
build the tallest tower with
Yeah.
spaghetti and marshmallows. Yep.
It has been repeated in many organizations and places, as Dave is mentioning. What is really interesting is the analysis of it, is who is succeeding, because you can, you are measuring just for the auditors, is you have to bunch of spaghetti and marshmallow, and you have to build a tower, and the highest tower is winning the competition. It's just really fun play. There are two types of people that are excelling at this. The first one are the architect, because of course, this is a bit embedded in the job, so, you're not surprised. But second, apparently kids are coming second better than executive and other people, because kids are experimenting, have no, preconception about how it should be done. And then they succeed most of the time better than the adults who have been to university and have degrees and so on and so forth. So, they
Who's
probably
the worst?
but they do better than, and at the end, most likely, I forgot the exact, lists, but I think the executive tend to be very bad at this job.
Lawyers are the worst.
So, yeah.
They spend most of their time arguing about it.
Totally. The lawyers.
So what do you
Love
think a
them.
mistake is, Esther?
Well, that's the thing. I don't believe that mistakes are what other people believe mistakes are. And for me, mistakes are, they are necessary for me to understand the reference point of different people, how they see life. So for example, I maybe think a mistake is how other people have seen something is not the right thing to do. But I don't want to see it like that now that I come to realize that for me, mistakes do not exist. Everything for me, if, for example, we build a car and there is a mistake, it doesn't work, well, it's because we haven't done something in the right way. So we just have to find out what it is and modify that so the car can run. But so this is how it's just saying, okay, because when we do, for example, we have in the time of humanity, a lot of inventors have found many different new inventions thanks to mistakes. So mistakes are different ways of seeing things or doing things, and sometimes they might work, sometimes they might not work. But if they don't work, it's maybe because we have done it maybe in a different way, and that might lead to something else, or it might lead to the how we know physics. And then, of course, then because we use a piece and not another piece, then of course maybe the car cannot work. But maybe that mistake might lead to some other type of understanding or realization.
Well, how about this scenario that I experienced some years ago? I had an MGB. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a little two-seater British Sportster. The car was a mechanical abomination. Okay, the joke is that the reason that the Brits like to drink warm beer is that the refrigerators were made by Lucas, and the reason the Brits never were able to become a computer manufacturing superpower is because they couldn't figure out how to make them leak oil. But anyway, I'm hurtling myself down this highway about 65 miles an hour, roughly 100 kilometers an hour. And I have a friend of mine with me in the passenger seat. And we hit the exit ramp on this highway. And it's a very short exit ramp. It's only about 120 meters tops. And, I hit the brakes, because I hit the top of the, I've taken this exit hundreds of times. So I hit the brakes at the top of the exit, not, in preparation of exiting. And my foot goes right to the floor. And, I'm 65 miles an hour, 120 meters. And at the end of this exit is a wall. And on the other side of this concrete wall is the river. All right. So here I am. I pump it a couple of times. I look to him to my right and I say, hold on. And I take the car into the field that's on the side of the exit, and it coasts to a stop. Now, the previous day, I had picked up the car from the mechanic who was replacing my brake rotors. And he forgot to tighten down one of the bleed nuts. And so every time I hit the brakes, I was leaking out the lifeblood of the brake system. And it just so happened to give out at the top of this exit. Now, I would probably consider that a mistake.
Now, an error.
An error?
What's
the difference between a mistake and an error then?
And I'm going to touch on it. Esther brought up, she's pretty philosophical about it. I think I'm pretty philosophical about this too. A mistake is something that you internally recognize that you could have done better, that you chose wrong. That's, to me, a mistake is something that you've got to self-recognize. Now, you can recognize where other people have made mistakes, but you could also call it, it was an error. It was an omission. There's tons of words in our vocabularies that we can use for that.
Me being a New Yorker, I could think of one.
Oh, yeah. It's an FU.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going vertically with that. Yeah. And so I think philosophically, for it to be a mistake, and what people are afraid of is making a mistake and the exposure of having others see you make that mistake.
Yeah.
That fear.
Exactly.
But I think that you've got to make mistakes. We joke about it as mentors for the robotics team, that as long as there's no blood or broken limbs, it's okay. They need to make those mistakes. But they have to realize they made a mistake. If they keep happily going along doing it wrong and they don't realize, well, then they're not learning from it. And a mistake is something that internally touches you enough that you learn from it.
Maybe a mistake is something that an action that you take that actually causes angst on somebody else.
Could be.
Right.
Okay, as opposed,
Exactly.
like this guy that didn't fix my brakes. Okay, he made a mistake because his error caused me to have some anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if we've all done stupid. What's that?
Soiled britches.
Soiled britches. That doesn't hurt anybody else except for yourself. It's a learning experience. Thinking you could make it to the next rest stop, for instance, those things are, that are learning experiences on yourself because they don't affect somebody else.
Created harm,
or just, what is harm? I mean, it doesn't have to be physical harm, right? It could be mental harm. It could be monetary harm. It could be property harm. It could be, but your action caused somebody else harm to somebody else.
Yeah.
That would be a good way.
I think
Yes.
mistakes happen a lot when we are not in living in the now. We're not experiencing life in the right now. When we're not flowing with life, then I have had loads of times when things have happened to me because I was not present. I was thinking about the past. I was thinking about the future. And perhaps when this mechanic did this to you, Joseph, he was actually not thinking, thinking in the sense of being in the now, being present.
No, I'm sure that's the case.
Doing
I'm sure
a
that's
job
the case.
he had to do. And then because of that, he made that mistake type of thing.
Right. Somebody might have made a phone call. He might have dropped something, or, who knows what. You're right. I mean, normally, a person whose job, I'm sure this wasn't his first brake job that he's ever done. I mean, this is what he did for a living. It was his shop. I'm sure something distracted him that he just forgot. These things happen. But I agree with you 100%. Usually a mistake, an error will occur when you're just not paying attention. I mean, as simple as, hitting your thumb instead of the nail. Very cool. So what is it with people from Sweden there? You guys are all philosophical. We had Sam on last time and he's from Sweden and, he's quite philosophical.
Maybe it's just a coincidence. If you believe. We could do another one about coincidences. Another
episode. Yeah.
There
Okay.
you go.
That's we're always looking for a theme, a coincidence. I think it's Gibbs rule number 38 or 32 that there's no such thing as coincidences.
Right, because there is a lot of debate on there. A lot of people who believe in coincidences and a lot of people who don't, or maybe a lot of people who also don't have an opinion. But I'm always kind of debating this with my friends or people that saying, oh, this is definitely a coincidence. And then I start debating, okay, how do you see it like that? So, yeah.
So let's see, we've almost wasted an hour of our lives here tonight, guys and gal, newcomer gal.
Why wasting? We actually have, gained a lot of sharing experiences. How many times can we meet like this and speak about something and bring each other into awareness or understanding or share different stories? I think that is actually the most enriching thing there is between individuals and people today's world.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it happens at least once a month, when we all get together at the Outliers Inn.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, you should join. You should be a regular. I think that you bring an interesting perspective to the conversation.
I agree.
instead of a bunch of guys talking shit all the
Oh,
time.
thank you. Yeah, no, it's good. I enjoy it. This is what I told you from the beginning. This reminds me when I used to go to the pub in the UK and then just have random conversations with people. I think this is exactly the same, takes me to the same place. I love this. I just wish we could meet as well and physically as well sometimes. But of course we're all in different places, but we just need a drink and just chat about random things, and lots of things can happen.
Well, now that the flights are up there, I'll tell you what, I'll take a flight up to Stockholm, and we could, probably the price of alcohol up there in Stockholm, as I understand from Sam, maybe it'll be cheaper to go to Denmark. But anyway.
Actually, I'm right next to Denmark. I am in Malmö, which is right next to Copenhagen. So it's not as far from you. You can't even drive.
Yeah.
Take the ferry. Yeah.
That sounds like a plan. Let's make that happen over the summertime before it gets dark again.
Yes, because actually I didn't tell you I'm moving to Norway for 5 months. So yes, it's
very cool.
It will be good. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Just going closer to the Aurora Borealis and see if I manage to see it.
Way up north? You're going up north in Norway?
Yes. It's a place called Molde, and it's a beautiful place. I'm going to be there for 5 months, and as part of my studies, and that's going to be very nice.
What are you studying?
As a kind of master in leadership and organization from different angles, and interesting. And in Molde, for example, in this place, they are specialists in logistics and in sports in Norway. So they are the most specialized university on this field, logistics, which you guys also do logistics, right? Manufacturing.
Yep, I do.
Yeah, Mule is a big logistics guy.
I remember, distribution and stuff. Yeah, so I'm going to do that again. I did study logistics in 2002 in Germany as part of my Erasmus master back then. And now I'm going to do it again in Norway a few decades later. So you can imagine how old I am.
Well, they got robots now.
You don't discuss age here.
Yeah.
Totally. The robots, I know. Yeah. So
I guess, Mule, there's only one thing left to do. I think it's been a great conversation. And, I hope Esther joins us again. It was a very, very interesting addition to the team. What do y'all think?
I think so.
I agree.
She needs to come back, and we need to have, figure out sometime that we can be a little bit less virtual and a little bit more real space.
Yeah.
But
Mule come this part of the world, and Joseph can surely sail from Germany to Sweden with his boat and make a great party. I've seen him in Florida with great, boats there, so I'm sure you can you can manage that.
Well, I understand I could pick up a rather large yacht at a cheap price nowadays.
Yeah, really.
There's a few of those on the market.
That's right.
So, yeah, they've been.
Actually, here in Sweden, the boats are very, very cheap.
Yes, I noticed that. There's a website called $1,000 or €1,000 yachts or something like that, and they got everything up to 23 footers for $1,500, and then you get a 30 footer that gets up to some money. But as soon as you put a wheel on it instead of a tiller, that's when the real money comes.
Yep.
So.
I met people that, normal, very ordinary people with boats. And I thought, well, that's definitely achievable for any person. So
yeah, very. All right, Mule, I guess there's only one thing left to say.
Yeah, well, just don't drive a robot like my brother.
And don't drive like my brother. Take care, everybody.
Have a great day.
Have a good day.
You have been listening to another episode of the Outliers Inn with your hosts, Joseph Paris and David Schneider. This program is produced by the Operational Excellence Society and sponsored by Zonotech Consulting Group International.